Hey guys, how are we doing? And welcome to my new YouTube channel for part 2 of this forest, river, lake painting that I've been working on. Part 1 has been published previously, but anyway, part 2 is especially important because I posted a picture on the Facebook group, acrylic painting for absolute beginners, and it included some water in the painting, and a few people asked how I did that. And I suggested, well, maybe I could do a video, but the group don't normally allow links. But one of the moderators, Diane, is it Diane or Diana? Sorry, Jaram said, okay, in this case, if you do one, we'll let it through. So that's what I'm going to do. So part 2 is all about the water and how I do it. Now, I've only been painting for about 8 months, so I'm no way an extra. This is an expert. This isn't me telling you how to do it. This is me telling you how I do it, and well, I hope it helps. So let's crack on with the painting. So when you look at water, water doesn't have a colour. It is a clear. It's clear. So when you look at a lake or a river, or when I look at a lake and a river, what you're seeing is reflections. Purely reflections, and then ripples and, you know, movement of the water. What I would normally do when I did a painting, and I'm not doing in this instance, is I would mirror what I've done up here at the same time. So I'd paint, when I did the blocking in, I'd do this, add some highlights, and then I'd replicate that without the detailed highlights underneath. But because I'm doing this as a separate video to do the water, I'm doing it in a slightly different way. So I've sort of done the trees first of all, and now I'm going to concentrate on this water. Now, if we look at what the reflection would be, we look at this shape here first of all. Now, it's almost like you're folding everything in half. Okay, so you know those paintings where when you used to do as a kid, you'd paint one half, fold it over, and it becomes symmetrical. Similar sort of process here. So if you look at this line here, and I've already done a faint line, and these are watercolor pencils, and I think they're really useful for drawing on canvases and sketching and so on. It sort of comes down like this. You then have a darker section, or you've got the light section here, sorry, that will go roughly like that, and then this bit here is slightly darker because picking up from the trees here. Doesn't have to be exact, and that's the thing, you're not trying to do a mirror image, you're just giving the impression that there are reflections. The most part of this is going to be blue, so I've done quite a light blue sky, and I've found that when I do reflections, I like to do it slightly darker than the sky, because I know that's the case. If you're painting a sea view, the sky is always a lighter colour blue than the sea, so I'm using the same sort of principles here. So really the blue or the sky will form sort of this shape really. I don't want to go right up to the edge because that would leave, it would leave too sharp an edge. And just to say, from where I left video 1, I have actually put the start of some rocks and some stones on here, but we'll cover that on the last section. For now, I'm purely going to focus on the water. So what I need to do is get some colours on the palette and just basically replicate what we've got here. So I'm going to get the palette ready, and when we come back, we shall make a start. So I'm going to start with the blue, and when I did the sky, and the sky is just blue, I haven't put any clouds in, I haven't put any detail in. I used white and Prussian blue to do the sky, so I'm doing the same again, but a slight, look at the state of that palette. I do love a messy palette, but with a tiny bit more Prussian blue in, so it's just a little bit darker. So I'm going to start with the blue, and the blue is just literally getting it on the canvas. So we're just going to paint that on, not looking for any sort of detail at this stage, just getting a nice coat. It doesn't matter about overlapping all this, because I'm going to go over all this in part 3, but just to the lines that I painted, just roughly going up to those, like so. And the same on the edge here, just giving that, excuse me, just giving that a good coat of blue. And it can be quite a thick coat because we're going to let this dry before I go on to the next stage. Remember, this is just how I do it. This isn't how you should do it. I'm just giving you an idea of how I do it, and you know, if that helps, then great. But I've watched so many videos on how to do, and I tend to take little pieces from each one, really, because it's all about the learning stage. Okay, that's the blue. I'm now going to prepare a range of colours that are different sort of blends of greens and yellows and so on to do the next part of the reflections. Okay, so what I've decided to do is, because I didn't do the blocking in stage when I did this first stage, I'm really struggling to do it. So what I've decided to do is to put a very thin mix, and it looks a mess, but do not worry about that, is to put a very thin watery paint just to give me a bit of a guideline really. And what you're then going to do is go in and put the sort of more detailed areas in. I'm hoping this is going to work out, because from now on I'm kind of making this up as I go along. So I've got the paints that I'm going to be using excuse me, on the palette. So I'm now going to just go with downward strokes first of all to do the reflections. I can do downward strokes with the brush and then go across with this soft bristle brush, but very lightly, very light. In fact, I might use a smaller one actually, because this is a small painting. For any soft fine brush that you have, you know, you can use anything. This is even softer. I might even use this one actually. Yeah, maybe I'll use that. I haven't used this one before, so it's always good to christen a new brush, isn't it? So okay, let's just grab the bull by the horns and go for this. So I'm going to pick up a range of colours, and I'm just going to pull down with that paint, and you can go over this as many times as you like. I'm going to go quite dark here, because then you can put different colours in. I think the brush is still a little bit wet actually. Yeah, this is going to be quite dark in this area here. And then just scoot across like so. You're now building up layers similar to how we did on the top section. We're just building up layers of paint now, and it will eventually give us the impression of reflections. You've got some lighter colour there. Sometimes you have to get one section to sort of dry before you go on to the next. So I'm just going to get a slightly darker shade in some of these areas first. And it's best if it's not uniform. You know, you've got different shades of this, different shades of that, all building up to be the reflections. And because acrylic paint dries really quickly, I would do the side swipes quite regularly. And here, not too concerned about the detail at the edge. I just want it to come down almost up to the blue, because we're going to work on that we're going to work on that shortly. Different shades dotted here and there. I love this colour. This is it's a light olive green. I love using this colour. Swipe across. Can you see the effect that it's starting to create? Starting to give us that sort of, how do you explain it? Almost marbly sort of look. And we'll come right down to it's touching the blue, but you can put sort of really good method is if you've got autumnal colours like the yellows, the reds, the oranges in your trees, because that really stands out in a reflection. It looks stunning. Well, stunning if you get it right. I've had a few mistakes trying to do that. Across again, and it sort of blends one colour into another a little. So you see what I'm doing here. Now I'm going to carry on and do the rest of this and get the first section of this reflection done, and then we'll come back, we can go on to the next. So now I've got most of the reflection done, I can go in now and just pick out some different shades, different colours here and there, and that is simply by popping some colour in. Sorry, should have taped the board down really, and then swiping across. It helps if the paint I've found is just slightly wet when you do this. What do we got? We've got some colour here. And you can spend as long or as little time as you like doing this really, but I like to do quite a bit of this because the more different shades and colours in it, I think it just looks better. It's all personal taste, isn't it? Going for a bit more water. She'll pop a bit of yellow ochre in over here. Like this, lighten that little bit there. Swipe with the brush every time. Swiping with the brush is the most important thing when you're doing this, because it just blends everything together. Well, this is going to be probably a bit darker down here, I would have thought, but we'll worry about this more later. And I'm not forgetting, we have these these conifers, don't we? So, oh, that's dark. Maybe is that too dark? I might regret this, but we shall see. We shall see. I'll just spread it out a bit, and the dark sort of tends to come up here as well. Okay, that looks okay. These look a bit blocky here, so we'll try and cover those a bit if we can. I think I got away with that. Still want to put more of the yellow ochre. That's the reflection of this line that goes all the way across, so I'm just gonna, using downward strokes, pop some more of that colour in. Okay, it's starting to come along. Now I need to do a little bit more detail. Right, this water was too light because it just didn't look natural. So I'm just going back in now and just making it darker, and it's looking a lot better. You know, it is all about learning from mistakes and learning as you go along, and although it can be very frustrating, you have to take that, because we all have to learn, don't we? And so I'm just going in with a darker tone for these reflections, but exactly the same principle though. And I think it's looking a bit more how I would expect it to look. And you can keep going back in and add little bits, and it's these bits that make it stand out, you know, just the little dabs of colour here and there before we go into the sort of finer detail, if you like. The reason I've changed brush is that this soft brush, the acrylic paint is starting to dry already, so it's just taken away the softness a little bit, and it's not as effective. So so I'm going to continue putting some darker bits in. And then just blending those in like that. So I'm going to carry on. There's not a lot more to do on this, but I'm going to get this done, and then we'll work on how we blend the blues in with the greens, because that's where, in my opinion, the magic happens. So what I've done, I've continued to add layers to this. Now I dried it because it was getting a little bit too thick and gloopy and too many layers. So the good old hair dryer came out. Now, those observant ones of you will have seen that I don't really need a hair dryer because I haven't got a great deal of hair, but it's an essential item when I'm doing this, doing the water. So I've just been going over, once again, with a little bit of water in the paint, so it's a little bit thinner, and doing exactly the same thing as I've been doing all the way along. Is just going in, doing pull down stripes with various different tones of what's around, really. So just going in and then quickly swiping across, and that way I think if you do the swiping after every couple of brush strokes like that, you can catch it before it dries. And then if there's any sort of hard edges like here, just soften those a little bit. It's starting to look like reflections on water. The next bit I'm going to tackle is going to be this bit here, where you have that messy edge. But in doing this bit here, it really does bring it all together. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to start bringing some of this darker shade into the blue, and we use exactly the same paint that I've been using for everything else, and just bring some of that over like that. Okay, like so. And we're going to continue to do that up to about here initially, and then the same on the other side. But I'll do some on camera. I won't just do it all off camera. I'll do a little bit on camera. I'll just, you know, use whatever brush that works for you, but I'm just using this, I don't even know what it's called, to be perfectly honest with you. It's just a flat brush. And you're just bringing some of the dark into the light. Like that. And it doesn't have to be uniform. It can be random. Well, it's better random, obviously, because very little is actually uniform when it comes down to water. And so, with the risk of waffling on, talking utter nonsense, I'm just going to carry on with this quietly and keep my mouth shut. And that's where you all sigh a sigh of relief, I'd imagine. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just pulling some of it over, and there's no pattern to it, especially. It's just random bits of the green into the blue, because after this we're going to take some of the blue into the green, and then it will start to form how we want it to. Also, this blue needs another coat because it's a bit patchy. So when I do this, I'm going to thicken up some of the blue on this. So I'm now going to focus on getting all the green into the blue. And then when we come back, we can start putting some of the blue into the green. So I'm still working on the green, and I've gone for a finer brush because I normally use slightly bigger canvases and the big brush tends to work, but this is obviously all reduced because it's a small canvas. So I'm continuing with the small brush. So, you know, it's quite a painstaking process, but it's quite satisfying as well, because you can see it starting to come together. The more these lines that you put in, the more it sort of looks like what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm just going to carry on and do a bit, and I might go quiet because I tend to struggle to talk and paint. I'm not very good at multitasking. So, yeah, I'm just going to do a little bit more on camera because it will take a little while to do. And then, as I said previously, we'll go into the blue and start pulling some of that into the darker areas. And then just a few little touches in sort of the centre, not too many. Don't want to overpower it in the middle. Just bring some of these out. As we go. It's really strange when I'm doing this and I know the camera's on. Makes me a lot more self-conscious. It's almost like someone's watching you paint. Does that make any sense? It probably doesn't. Or it's just me. So anyway, I'm going to carry on with this. You don't need to watch all this, so I'm going to carry on, and then we will work on the blue. So what I'm going to do now is pull just bits of the blue into the green, and to do that I'm just using the rigger brush, and just not too much, less is more when I'm doing this. It's just to pull a few little bits over like that. And it just gives the appearance of, I don't know, I guess, is it movement in the water? I don't know, but we'll come on to that shortly, because we're going to put a few little ripples in here and there. And I don't want this video to be too long. I'm not sure how long it's gone on for, because I've been waffling for a bit, so it might be that it's going on for too long. So I'm not going to film loads of me doing this. I need to wet the paint a little bit, because I mixed this blue up quite a while ago. But I'm just going to continue on both sides, just sharpening the edges of some of these lines and just pulling it over fractionally into the green. So I'm going to continue with that. When we get to the top, what I do like to do, and I'll do some of this now, because this is obviously further in the distance, so it's a lot smaller. You know, your blue reflections are a lot smaller, but I do like to just arc it round a bit for places where it just catches a glimmer of the sky coming through what might be the trees, or I don't know. No, but just to extend it out just a little bit, but not too much. I'll probably need an even smaller brush to do this, because it does have to be really small. I think how will I do this? Because they are really just tiny dots in effect. Yeah, that's better. But just pop in a few of these little highlights at the top. And sometimes they can arc round a little bit, but I'm not going to do that, because the light would clearly be hidden from those areas. And I think it's more about not making it having a dead stop at the end. It gradually sort of fades from blue to patches of blue, and then fades into the green shadow beyond. Okay, I'm going to continue with the blue off camera, and we'll check it out when we come back. So that is pretty much how I do water. I'm not going to film anymore, but I will be doing just a little bit more detail, you know, in this, using the sort of techniques that I've been using previously. But I think it stands out quite well. And I think it's relatively easy to do. And, you know, once you've done it once or twice, you'll know exactly what to do. And I don't actually think this is the best one I've done, but I think that's got something to do with me filming it and being a little bit self-conscious. But I hope this has helped, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do this. And the next video is going to be part 3, where I'm going to start working on maybe some of these side bits and the rocks, and I'll maybe finish it in part 3. We'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, guys. Keep up the good work, keep painting, and you take care, my friends. Bye bye now.